never imagined I'd be telling a story like this. A story that isn't just about a house or money, but about family, trust, betrayal, and the strange, stubborn twists life loves to throw at us when we're least prepared. I gave my son everything I had, my time, my energy, my dreams, and above all, a roof over his head. I did it all with the best intentions, with the kind of love that doesn't keep score, with a belief that if you pour your heart into someone, they'll pour theirs back into you. But one night, while I slept, the very foundation of our world cracked. The house we called home, the place where every memory lived, was sold silently, almost like a whisper in the dark, without a single word spoken to me. The first memory that comes to mind is the day we found that house. It wasn't just a shelter. It was a symbol of our family's hopes, a brick-and-mortar promise that life could be steadier, brighter, safer. My husband had left me with a legacy, a small seed of inheritance, and I did what many mothers do. I turned that seed into a home for my son, a place where his laughter would echo through the rooms, and where he would grow up knowing the world could be kind if given a chance. I worked hard for that house. I worked nights and weekends, sometimes 2 jobs at the same time. Every bit of energy poured into keeping that door open for him, making sure there would always be a way back home, no matter how tough things got outside those walls. My son grew into a fine young man in that house, or so I believe. He was curious, bright, full of questions, and sometimes a little reckless in a way that only youth can be. I did my best to walk alongside him, to listen when he spoke, and to hold him up when he stumbled. I told him stories about the old days, about the struggles I faced, and the little victories that kept our family going. I showed him how we save, how we plan, how we protect the things we love, and I thought those lessons would anchor him, would keep him grounded no matter what winds blew his way. But time changes people in quiet, almost invisible ways. It started with small things, missed calls, excuses, a growing distance that didn't feel dramatic at first, like a thin frost on a window that didn't fully reveal what lay beyond. I told myself it was just a phase, a growing up phase, a natural drift as life pulled him toward new friendships, new interests, new responsibilities he wanted to claim on his own. I believed in his potential so completely that I skipped asking the hard questions, the ones that might have saved us from this later pain. I told myself he would come back to the table, that we would talk through whatever needed talking through, and that our bond, built on years of shared meals, school plays, torn homework sheets, and whispered dreams, would endure. But the signs kept piling up in the quiet corners of our life. I started noticing unpaid bills piling up in the kitchen drawer, junk mail from utility companies, letters from the landlord that I didn't quite understand but could feel in my bones what they meant. I asked him about it. He gave me half smiles and confident replies, the kind of assurances that feel good in the moment but rot away under scrutiny. He told me not to worry, that he had everything under control, that he was handling the money, that the future was bright, that we were on the path to something better. I wanted to trust him. I wanted to believe that all the sacrifices I'd made to give him a better life hadn't been for nothing. The night it happened started like any other night, with the clock ticking softly and the house breathing in its own quiet rhythm. I fell asleep listening to the gentle hum of the fridge, the distant sound of a car passing by on the street, the soft rustle of curtains in the evening breeze. I slept deeply, exhausted by days of worry and hope, by days when I tried to balance being a mother, a caretaker, a survivor, and a dreamer all at once. In the sleep, I felt the stability of the house around me, a kind of security that felt sacred. It's strange how a home can feel sacred even when it's just a roof and walls. What makes it sacred are the lives that fill it with laughter, tears, and small, ordinary rituals that become forever memories. When I woke, the world was suddenly different. The bed was still there, the covers still warm from my presence, but the house Our house was no longer ours in the way it had been. There was a strange, almost clinical silence in the rooms that used to hold the sound of a family. The kitchen where I'd taught him to bake, the living room where we'd watched games and cartoons, the stairs that creaked with all the stories of our lives. I walked through the house as if I were a ghost, touching surfaces that once felt like touchstones, listening for the familiar crackle of the old floorboards. And then I saw the papers on the table, the legal documents, the signatures, the seals. The house had been sold. The reality hit me with a force that was almost physical, a punch to the chest that left me breathless and dizzy. There were no words, not at first. In the days that followed, I tried to make sense of what had happened by digging through the room where we kept the old photos, the album that carried our family's history, the framed pictures that watched over us like quiet guardians. I found a confession, not from him out loud, but in the quiet, careful handwriting of the actual reality. The truth that the house had been sold, that the money had gone into a personal account, that my son had made decisions for us without consulting me, without telling me, without inviting me to participate in the choice that would define the rest of our days. When I confronted him, the scene was not dramatic in cinematic terms. It was raw and painful in a way that felt intimate and unfiltered. He spoke with a calm, almost practiced tone, as if he'd rehearsed this moment many times in his head, as if he'd learned to manage the fear and panic that would erupt in most people. He said he needed the money, that things weren't easy anymore, that I clung to the past as if it had roots in my bones. He said I was holding him back, that I needed to accept that progress means letting go of the physical symbol that held us together. I'll spare you every granular detail of the confrontation, the words that cut through the air like knives, the way my heart seemed to recoil with every sentence. The bottom line was simple and brutal. I had given him everything, and he had decided to walk away from it all. Not just the house, but our entire shared history. The house was gone. The memories attached to it felt lighter than air, and I was left with a void that no amount of money could fill. In the days that followed, the world around me didn't vanish. It shifted, yes, but life did not stop. I found myself standing at the edge of a decision I'd never imagined I'd face. How to live without the anchor that had held my life in place. It's strange how a single event can alter a life's trajectory so completely. The house wasn't merely a physical space. It was the stage on which my family's story played out. The place where every birthday cake was cut, every winter night was warmed by a fire, every whispered promise about the future was spoken aloud and believed with the kind of sincerity that only a mother can muster. I didn't crumble completely, though. The shock began to yield to something else, an ember of resolve, a stubborn light that refused to be snuffed out by the betrayal. If he had chosen to sever the bond, so be it. I would redefine what home meant, I would redefine what family meant, and I would protect what mattered most: my own health, my own dignity, and the possibility of a future that would no longer depend on a single house or a single person. I moved to a smaller place, a space that felt almost too intimate at first, a room with a view that didn't scream safety but whispered about new beginnings. The walls were bare, the furniture modest, but there was a quiet there that I hadn't felt in years. It was a different kind of home, one built not on inheritance and sacrifice alone, but on choice and resilience. I learned to cook again for myself, in a kitchen that was smaller but mine. I learned to fill the days with small rituals that brought back the sense of control I'd lost. And I reached out to friends and family who offered their ears and their shoulders without any judgment. Just a lot of patience and a lot of straight talk. The process of healing wasn't linear and it wasn't quick. Some days the old memories would haunt me. Scent of the old garden, the exact sound of the front door creaking at dusk, the way the sun used to spill into the dining room at exactly 4 in the afternoon. On other days, I would feel a quiet sense of peace, a realization that the house didn't own me. I owned my life, and I could choose the path I wanted to walk. My son's choices remained a mystery, a riddle with half the pieces missing. I didn't demand an explanation, at least not in the sense of demanding his love back or demanding an apology that would magically fix the fracture between us. What I demanded was space for healing, respect for the person I had become through all these years of acts of care, and above all, the right to set boundaries that would keep my heart safe from further harm. As the weeks turned into months, I found new sources of meaning. I reconnected with old friends who reminded me of who I was before the house, before the worries, before the fear. I began to write again, small journals at first, then longer pieces that poured out the feelings I had kept locked away. Writing was not an escape, but a ladder, a way to climb out of the pit of despair and into a room where I could breathe freely again. People who read my words reached out to me with their own stories of loss and betrayal. Some of them were strangers, some were family. All of them carried a piece of the same ache I carried, and all of them found a nugget of hope in the stories we shared. During this time, I also learned something crucial about forgiveness. Forgiveness wasn't about excusing what he did or pretending it didn't hurt. It was about freeing myself from the heavy weight of vengeance that would otherwise poison the remaining years of my life. Forgiveness allowed me to see that the real damage wasn't just the sale of the house or the betrayal by a son, but the way I allowed bitterness to shape my days. Forgiveness was a practice, not a feeling, something I chose to do day after day until it began to feel real, until it began to lift the chains I wore around my heart. The most surprising gift of this journey was discovering that I could still be a mother in a broader sense. Even if our relationship had become complicated, I didn't have to cut him out of my life completely to heal. I could love him from a distance, hold him in my thoughts with compassion rather than anger, and still protect my own peace. There were moments when I would miss the old days, the easy warmth of a family that sat around a table every night and shared stories after supper. But those moments also reminded me that life is always in flux, that what we call home is not a fixed place, but a living, breathing process of growth and change. I began to notice small, almost magical things in daily life. The way a neighbor's dog would greet me with a wagging tail and a grin. How the morning sun would slip through the gap in the curtain and paint the walls with a soft gold. How a new friend would introduce me to a book that spoke to my heart in a language I could finally understand. These were the little anchors that kept me steady when the larger storm roared, and slowly, with every new day, I found more of myself. The parts that had been buried under the weight of worry, the parts that believed in possibility again, the parts that refused to surrender to bitterness. In this journey, I learned to redefine what home really means. Home isn't just a building with a door and a key. Home is where your heart feels safe enough to dream again, where your mind feels free to think of the future without the fear of sudden loss. It's the people who stand by you, the conversations that heal, the boundaries you set to protect your peace, and the courage to keep moving forward even when the path ahead isn't clear. Home is where you choose to be when the world tries to push you down, and I chose to be here with my own breath steady, with my own voice clear, telling you my story. If you're listening to this and you're carrying a similar weight, the weight of a betrayal by someone you trusted with your life, know this: you are not alone. It doesn't matter what country you're in, what language you speak, or how deeply you have loved someone who hurt you. The feeling is universal. The journey from trauma to healing is not a straight line. It's a winding road with detours, with moments of doubt, with brief glimpses of hope that return again and again. What matters is the decision to begin. Take the first step toward reclaiming your life, toward choosing your own well-being, toward learning the hard truth that you can still be whole even when your story doesn't go the way you. I won't pretend that the pain vanished overnight. It did. Some days, the sound of a doorbell or a memory would bring back the ache with a force that surprised me. But with time, the ache lost its sharp edge. It changed. It became something else, with a softer memory, a reminder of who I was and who I could become if I kept choosing. I learned to hold on to gratitude for the things that remain, people who stood by, the help I regained, a new routine that gave me back, the small acts of kindness that reminded me that goodness still exists in the world, even in the darkest corners of a broken home. As for my son, our relationship remains complicated, and perhaps it always will. I don't pretend to have all the answers or to know what the future holds. What I do know is this: I am not defined by the sale of that house, not defined by the betrayal I experienced, and not defined by the absence of a simple, easy resolution. I am defined by how I respond, by the choices I make every single day to protect my own peace, to nurture my own growth, and to cultivate a life that is mine to live, not a life dictated by someone else's choices. If I could offer a message to parents who have stood where I stood, or children who might one day find themselves in a similar situation, it would be this: hold on to your heart, but don't become captive to it. Love fiercely, give generously, and still guard your boundaries. A home is never only about the house. It's about the heart and the people who inhabit it. If a house is sold or a dream is deferred, it doesn't mean the end of your story. It can become the turning point, the moment when you decide to rewrite your future with courage, with honesty, and with faith in your own strength. So here I am, telling you my truth, not to claim the past or to punish the future, but to offer a beacon for anyone who might be walking a similar road. If you're listening and you're hurting, don't hesitate to reach out. Talk to someone you trust. Write down your feelings. Seek professional support if you need it. And most importantly, give yourself permission to heal at your own pace. Healing isn't a race. It's a personal journey that no one else can define for you. And finally, if you've ever faced the sting of betrayal by someone you believed would stand by you, if you've ever wondered whether you'd ever trust again, know this: trust can be rebuilt, even if the road there is long and winding. It begins with you, your decision to forgive, to protect your own heart, to rebuild your life with intention, and to keep moving forward with the quiet courage that resides inside each of us. The house may be gone, but the home inside you remains, and that home is where your future begins. Thank you for listening, for staying.